Hey, this is Nicole Kelly, host of Disarming Disability. Thanks for listening to the following show on Public House Media.
This is Jenna Burt, host of the Confessions of a Military Spouse podcast here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Confessions of a Military Spouse, where we dig deep and talk about the unspoken hard truths of what it's really like to be a military spouse. A new show comes out bi-weekly. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you never miss an episode of Confessions of a Military Spouse. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Hi everyone, welcome to Beauties and Headcanons, where we're nerdy and you probably are too. I'm Lindsay and I'm here today with Emily and Elisabeth, and we're here to talk nerdy to you. So very recently, Captain Marvel came out, and although there's been a slew of other amazing movies that came out, all three of us have managed to see the movie, and we wanted to talk a little bit about that, the new trailer that came out for Endgame, and anything else that we kind of want to talk about with the MCU. So here it goes.
Yeah, all right. So just to give you guys a little bit from my background, I know like zero zilch nada about Captain Marvel as a character. So like getting to see the movie I thought was really interesting and fun, and also like just the fact that she's like, I don't know, like a super powered female in the Avengers, because like Natasha has her skill set. It's not like actual superpowers though. And then there's Scarlet Witch, who has her powers, but I don't know. It's just it's interesting to me the way Captain Marvel is like a. I guess my perception before I saw the movie was that she'd be kind of like a Marvel's version of a female Superman, if that makes any sense. So that's kind of what I went into the movie kind of expecting to learn about her, is like how she came to Earth and how she came, because like I expected her to be from a foreign planet and that she'd have all these superpowers of some kind, and like that's kind of my expectation, was that she'd be a female Superman.
Right. And so my concept was basically, I read a couple of the comics that came out recently about her backstory.
Okay.
And they don't really go into what the movie went into. They talk a lot about her after realizing that she's Captain Marvel. There's some kind of idea about her coming back to her family and being there with her, trying to kind of like readjust to being back with her mom and her brother, and so it's kind of a weird other story. So I didn't really get too into that, but I had an idea of at least that she was, a human, and that she had these powers, not necessarily where they came from or any of that. Just I knew she was a human for whatever it's worth.
Yeah. So I basically expected Captain Marvel to actually be born on a different planet, originally from somewhere else, just like Superman was from Krypton. Spoilers! This is going to be a very spoiler-filled episode for those who have not seen the movie and don't want spoilers. Go see the movie first before listening. I was definitely expecting her to actually be from a different planet, not that she would like spend some time there and all that. So, anywho, yeah, that was my perspective.
Yeah. Well, I had a bit more experience with Carol Danvers. Not like a huge amount of experience, but I did have some grasp of who she is, who Captain Marvel is, like how she kind of became Captain Marvel. Kind of an interesting story behind the whole name of Captain Marvel that I can get into a little bit later. But my very first encounter with Carol Danvers was in the X-Men animated series, because in that series, Rogue can fly, and she's like super strong, and she has like some other powers other than just like, her typical draining powers. And she actually got those because she drained Ms. Marvel, because that's who Carol was at that time, and she actually left her in a coma. And so there was like a whole like episode of her like rediscovering that and discovering Carol and everything like that. So that was my very first encounter with Carol Danvers. My next encounter was I read about her in Civil War II, where I really, really disliked her because just her character and like what she was doing and how she was going about it was just, it really rubbed me the wrong way. So I intensely disliked her in that arc. And then I saw her in Avengers Assemble, the animated series, and there was a point in that series where the original team of Avengers had disappeared and were kind of presumed dead, and so her and Black Panther kind of put together this other team that that became the Avengers, and they led them, and they found the original Avengers, and at that point, like, I was kind of, like, neutralish on her. I did like her interactions with Cap because, like, obviously they were both in the military, and she tended to call him Army, and he called her Air Force. And
I like that.
They had kind of, like, just a cool vibe with each other. And so that was pretty much most of my experience with her. Most of it was as Ms. Marvel, and some of it was neutral, and a little bit of it was bad. So, like, when I went into the movie, like, I was kind of unsure, like, where I would stand on Carol Danvers personally. And after seeing the movie, I have to say, not a whole lot has changed. I guess I still feel pretty neutral about her as a whole.
So you obviously had a lot more background than either Lindsay or I did, which is interesting because we all kind of came into it with a different, background knowledge, different perspective, different things that we might have already been looking for without realizing it, which kind of explains, as we were talking and preparing for the episode, all of us kind of took away a little bit different impressions after we saw the movie.
I mean, I don't know. So I absolutely love everything Marvel. I try to see the best in all of it. And I'll admit, I really wanted to go into this one without an idea of what I was hoping for it to do. I didn't look too much into theories. I didn't spend too much time trying to find out what there was to find out. I kind of just wanted to go in and see what there was to see. So I knew, obviously, that Brie Larson was going to be playing Carol, and I knew that Jude Law was in there.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that he was in there. That surprised me. I'm like, oh, hello. Hi, friend. How you doing?
Well, and of course, I come in and Aurelia saw it with me the second time I saw it, and she was looking at him, and she's like, who is he? Why do I know him? Why do I know him? And I looked at her, and I was like, the young Dumbledore? And she goes, oh!
Uh-huh.
So, of course, she knows him from that. And she absolutely loved it. I've been trying to convince her she wants to cosplay as Captain Marvel for ages now, months and months and months. And when I told her we were going to go see it on Friday night, she told me, well, I mean, I guess I'll go see it, but I don't want to cosplay as her. And I was like, well, okay. But let's just go see it, and it's just a movie. Let's just go see it. And by the time we left, she was, like, already shopping for a cosplay. She was all about it. So there are a few things that I really thought were well done. It wasn't too in-your-face female empowerment, which I thought was great. There is a lot of that with Wonder Woman, honestly. Uh-huh. There was a whole lot of female in there. And what I liked about this one was especially the montage where she got knocked down and she stood up and all those different things while she was talking to Supreme Intelligence.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And she was standing up in all those different times of her life, and I was just like, it was wonderfully done. I absolutely loved that. But there's a really cool message that's going on throughout that part of the movie. My general ideas, of course, are that I think we have a lot of overpowered characters in the MCU right now. And I'm nervous and excited and jittery and all of those things, trying to figure out exactly what they're going to do with Endgame. But again, not trying to go in thinking I know so much about this, because I have been disappointed before and I don't want to do that. So that's kind of like where I stand as far as her as a person. I think as a superhero, she's a bit overpowered. And I said that earlier when we were talking too. I feel like we really didn't need another overpowered superhero.
Yeah. I'm like, my biggest question is, like, how do you beat her? Do you
right.
do you just convince her that you're not a threat and so she doesn't worry about you? What do you do?
Well, and when you're watching a movie and you get to like the climax point and there's this huge conflict and you're like, okay, how are they going to get through this? And then someone just has this superpower and boom, they reached within themselves and there it is, and ta-da, they can fly all over the place and redirect ships, and the Kree ships can all get turned around and aimed at each other, yada yada, like all of that. Awesome. But at the same time, I felt sort of like underwhelmed by that. I wanted
it
more.
lacks the emotional weight, I think.
Yeah.
For me.
Like
because
I didn't have a chance to really like get into it, and I didn't have a chance to vouch for anybody. It was just like, oh, okay, she can just turn the ship around, fine.
Yeah, because this was kind of echoed a little bit earlier when she was captured by the Skrulls, and she had those, things on her hands, and she was trying to get them off. And, like, basically her whole thing was, okay, we'll just be stronger, get stronger, and do it.
Yeah.
And that doesn't seem to be much of any adjustment to this new level of power, like especially during that final fight and when she like comes out and is flying around. I remember quite humorously, I think everybody does, when Iron Man was experimenting with his different propulsion systems and trying to get it just right, and like learning how to fly and how to control it and everything, and it's like there was absolutely none of that. There was
she just suddenly knew how to do it.
Yeah,
magically,
just, like,
I'm doing it.
Yeah, she, like, magically somehow knows how to use her powers, and maybe she doesn't know, like, the extent of them. Plus, like, in most of the movie, she had that, like, suppressor thing on her neck, and, like, we thought it was what gave her the powers the whole time.
Right.
Turns out it was really the opposite. It was trying to inhibit her powers the whole time. Like,
yeah, and she just magically knows to rip it off and everything will work out.
Right, like, that's not gonna... If she rips it out, it's not gonna, like, consume her and kill her. Like, I don't know, I thought something bad was gonna happen when she ripped it out and she would, like, suffer this really debilitating thing or something, but no, she's fine.
Can I just say that I loved the contrast between her inhibitor and Thor's inhibitor? Or because they look like a very similar device, but when Thor pulled it off of his neck, and he's a Norse god, he had at least a struggle with it. He at least it hurt a little. I mean, she didn't even look like it stung.
I know. Well, and I wonder too, because like, so she absorbed the power of the energy core of that aircraft, right? That's how she got her powers.
It was the Lightspeed engine.
It was the Lightspeed engine, right? So like, was that powers that her mentor got from the Tesseract?
This is the part where they kind of fused a little bit of the origin of her powers from the comics, because in the comics there was an explosion and her DNA fused with Mar-Vell's, who was actually a guy in the comics, but no big deal for me. I don't care.
Whatever. Yeah, it's a name.
So when that happened, that's when she gained all of her powers, because she became fused with that Kree DNA. And so I guess in the movie they're saying that the explosion from the engine core somehow gave her this power, I think. I think they were trying to mimic that or call back to it in some way.
Okay. I could see that as the explanation. And like that, so the technology behind that core was like powered by the Tesseract?
Yes.
Okay.
Or the stone within the Tesseract.
Right.
Which is
kind of space stone, correct?
Yeah, which is kind of interesting that her powers is the way it is, because you would think that, given like how her powers function, that it would be something from the Power Stone, but it's actually from the Space Stone. And I don't know, it's just kind of weird. You would think that if her powers were from the Space Stone, then it would function differently. I don't know.
It is interesting though that's where she gets her powers from.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, from my perspective, I kind of along with the same lines as Lindsay. I love Marvel movies. I really enjoy all of them. And like, for me, like, I'm just kind of a happy-go-lucky movie viewer. So like, I don't usually think too critically about a ton of stuff when I'm seeing it, unless it's like super obvious. Like my question, like, how does she actually get her powers? Or my other question was, how did the Skrull guy get the recording, and I think the explanation, the recording from the black box on the aircraft, and I think they kind of explained it that, like, as he was impersonating as the SHIELD agents, he was able to kind of get it out of storage or something like that.
They really don't say how he got it.
Okay.
He just says, "Oh, don't you know by now? I do all kinds of things that I'm not supposed to do."
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So I'm like, okay.
So I guess we're supposed to draw our own conclusions.
Sure.
Right,
I mean, I'm okay with movies making us draw our own conclusions as long as it's not like a big plot hole where we're like, okay, really? But like, I could see him doing that though. Like, he was impersonating Fury's boss for a while, so I could understand him being able to have access to that stuff. But, like, as a whole, I really enjoyed the movie for, like, entertainment value, for, like, I loved the 90s throwback music, just because, like, I grew up listening to that stuff, and, like, you know, singing it loud in my room and everything. It just, so much fun. So much fun. And, okay, maybe you guys have different thoughts about this, but the fight scene music with, I'm Just a Girl, I just thought it was great. It was just like, it made me smile the whole time.
Like, I have an interesting perspective because when I look at and when I talk about movies, I look at it from different points of view. I look at it from the point of view of just somebody like watching it. I look at it from the point of view as a writer. And so I kind of look at it both entertainment-wise and critically. And so my opinions on them can sometimes seem a little odd. And I know when some people say that, oh, a movie is bad, that they mean that, oh, there really isn't any good or redeemable parts. Or when they say that a movie is not bad, then that means that it's good. And for me, that's not always necessarily the case. I think a movie can not be bad, but at the same time not necessarily be good. I think there is an area for movies that are good in an entertaining perspective, but from an outside writing perspective, it kind of falls flat. So, me coming into this, like, I think it definitely is entertaining, and I think it's fun. The soundtrack is awesome, but I mean, Marvel usually knocks that out of the park anyway. So, but like when I was when I was just watching it and thinking of this movie just as a single movie all on its own, I'm like, okay, yeah, this is cool, this is fun. Yeah. But when I took a step back and took in the fact that this is a part of this whole overarching story that they have going on in the MCU, and it's supposed to fit in there, that's when it kind of started to fall apart a little bit for me.
I could see that. Like I was saying, like I agree with you that as a movie, it's a good movie. It's an entertaining movie, and I think it kind of came across like Thor Ragnarok came across that way to me too. It was a good movie all by itself, standalone movie, and that was all I thought of. You know, like I saw it like Sunday night, and I really enjoyed it. My husband and I had a great time, and after the movie we're like, this is one of our favorite Marvel movies as a standalone movie. Like, I really enjoyed it from that perspective. And I don't honestly remember or know a lot about I've seen all of the movies, but I don't remember enough of the details per se to remember how well it will fit, or how well it does fit in the grand scheme of things. And so from that, I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to worry about it. So, I don't know.
Well,
I just really
know
enjoyed
that they have already directly contradicted a couple of things, like right off the top of my head. They contradicted stuff from Iron Man 2 and stuff from the original Thor movie, from the first one. Because in Iron Man 2, when Coulson is like introducing himself to Pepper, and like introducing S.H.I.E.L.D. and everything, at that point, they aren't even called S.H.I.E.L.D. They actually go by their full name. And so when he gives like that full name to her, she's like, oh, that's a mouthful, isn't it? And he's like, yeah, we're working on it.
I remember
And then by the end of the movie, he comes in and says, you know, actually introduces themselves as S.H.I.E.L.D., like, you know, basically like, we figured it out. We're going to be S.H.I.E.L.D., that's our acronym, and that's who we are.
Yeah.
But in Captain Marvel, in the 90s, like...
Right. It's supposed to be
10 years or so before, I think, something like that.
It's supposed to be like 1995 in the movie.
Yeah, and I don't remember when Iron Man 2 was supposed to take place.
I don't remember either.
But, because my memory sucks sometimes when it comes to years. But, you know, obviously, you know, it's taking place a good deal before, and they already have badges, and they go around saying that they're S.H.I.E.L.D.
Right.
When in Iron Man 2, they didn't even come up with that yet. And in the movie Thor, at that point, S.H.I.E.L.D. had no idea that aliens existed.
Yeah.
Like, Thor coming to Earth and everything like that, like, they thought he was just crazy. Like, they didn't even believe he was a real Norse, you know,
right.
a real Norse god, or that he was an alien or anything like that, until, you know, he finally proved it to them, and they were like, okay, so aliens do exist.
I see.
But, again, if you take that into account, you know, Ms. Marvel, or Captain Marvel happening in the 90s, they've already had contact with aliens. So that really throws that into a weird perspective of why are they acting like aliens are this new thing, and they have to prepare for an alien threat when they've been supposed to have been knowing about this since the 90s, you know?
Yeah, well, and the only explanation I could think of, which seems kind of like, sort of like a Marvel-ish thing to do, is like, oh, everybody's memories were erased, and so then we had to kind of restart from
But then how would he know about the pager in Captain Marvel?
I don't know. Yeah, see, that's another thing. Like, okay, I remember seeing Captain Marvel's symbol show up on that pager in a different end scene, right? Mm-hmm. Not in the Captain Marvel one. It showed up before in a different movie's end scene, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, it was
which one was
the
that?
Infinity War.
Infinity War. Okay, so I do remember that showing up. And I don't remember the circumstances around it. I just remember that they, like, saw it and Captain Marvel's symbol was on there, and I was like, oh, Captain Marvel! But I don't remember anybody saying anything about what it was or who it came from. Oh wait, no, I just remembered.
And as Fury was basically turning into ash, he had pressed the pager.
He gave it to what's her name that was with him, right?
No,
I thought she turned into ash too.
That's right, she did. But yeah, I do remember that he turned it on. I remember that now. Okay.
And see, here's the thing, like, okay, so he's known Captain Marvel is out there, that she's immensely powerful, obviously can take out missiles and starships and all of this stuff, and it's like, okay, so what happened with the Chitauri invasion? Like, why did you have to get together this ragtag group of heroes and hope that they could pull this out? Like, I mean, that's cool that you wanted to put together the Avengers and have them work together, but why didn't you at least go ahead and activate the pager too, like, as a backup? Because if for whatever reason they couldn't pull it off, you're done. Earth is done. Yeah. That's it. That's all. You know? Like, why wouldn't you at least activate it so even if she can't be there for the fight, like, if worse comes to worse, she can come in and clean house after the fact, you know? It when you really think about it, that is such an incredible risk, and that is so stupid of Fury to take that risk. Because, I mean, obviously looking at it from the events that it's already happened, we know that everything works out. But in the moment, they didn't know what it was going to work out. They had no idea how everything was going to work out.
And it's not like if you push the pager once and then it, like, destructs or anything. You could
it's not like a one-time use thing.
Right.
And why didn't he, call her when all of the stuff was starting to happen, when they were looking for the stones on Earth?
Sure.
During the events of Infinity War, why didn't he push it then? Like, that just... Again, plot holes.
Drama.
Plot holes. I can't help but see them.
Yeah. No, but I see that too, now that you're pointing things out like that, because, I mean... remembering back to, that was the first Avengers movie where the alien invasion happened with Loki and everything.
Yep.
That is a big event, and, like, with a ragtag team of people who have basically never worked together before, it seems...
And don't show signs of working together that well.
No, right, exactly. Like, for their first thing together, that's kind of a problem.
That's incredibly lucky.
Yeah, that they actually figured out what to do. Yeah. And then worst thing to happen is that, like, Captain Marvel shows up, everything's all done, and say, "Oh, well, thanks for showing up. We appreciate you coming by. Nice to see you again." I don't know.
And at the end of the movie, you remember when Ronan the Accuser was in that ship?
Yes.
And she, like, was right in front of the ship, and, like, I call it her skadoosh moment. Because it kind of reminds me of when somebody asked Brian Griffin from Family Guy if he's been working out, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I've just been a little bit," and all of a sudden he just flexes really hard and is like, skadoosh! And
like
so I call that her skadoosh moment.
It's like
that's all she does. Thing. And they just turn around and leave. And it's like, this is a hostile alien force. Like,
right? Wouldn't you just?
Why would you not take care of them?
Right. I mean, unless she was like trying to show mercy and say, "You better not come back here again." But that seems like a big risk to take too. I don't know.
It doesn't make any sense. And I mean, I know you need Ronan the Accuser in Guardians later on in Guardians of the Galaxy, but at the same time, that makes no sense. She's already destroying ships. Why is she going to just stop?
Why would she just let him go? Like,
yeah,
I could see if they
but
made
why
it
that ship? Like, why wouldn't she just stop at disabling the ships and letting them all go?
Sure. I could see it if they made it so he escaped.
Yeah.
Like maybe with a key guy of his or something like that. But
yeah, like maybe he got off on an escape pod, or maybe when she was destroying the other ships, he went ahead and like tucked tail and ran.
Right.
But like that whole sequence, I don't know. It just seemed really weird for her to just all of a sudden stop and skadoosh and let him go.
Yeah.
So I mean, in my mind, this kind of makes her responsible for Groot's death, because if she had taken care of Ronan the Accuser, he wouldn't have been searching for the Power Stone, and Groot wouldn't have had to sacrifice himself.
I could see that. Oh.
But again, when you're going back and trying to push this character into this already created world that you never thought of and never prepared for, you get pieces like this, that just, they're shards that they don't quite fit as well,
Okay, now here's a crazy thought for you. What if she's in an alternate timeline?
Oh, that would be weird.
I know.
Now,
right?
Marvel has done alternate timelines before, but I don't think they've really touched on it much in the MCU yet. That would be interesting to...
It would be interesting if this is an introduction to it, though, and that might cover up a lot of the plot holes, but then that's kind of like a cheap out.
Yeah, and also because, like, Fury, the whole thing with, like, Fury encountering her and having the pager, and it's like, well, how would the Fury from this universe have the pager if it was in another universe? And,
right. I mean, unless similar events happen, but not exactly the same way. I don't know. But then there would be a lot more to explain, too.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I did really love how Carol was portrayed, though. Like, 'cause she is her own person, and she's got so much snark. Her like quick, like, I don't know, like the back and forth she has with all of the people she talks with. It's like boom, boom, like, oh, I loved it. And like she knows to go with her gut. She's a strong, like, headstrong person, so she like feels in her gut what she needs to do and doesn't really hesitate to do it. Unless somebody's trying to, like, twist her will. And then she's like, something feels wrong here. And it's because somebody's trying to manipulate her. But she's always working towards the greater good. Which is what I really think is important about her characters. Like, she always knows, like, in her gut what the greater good is.
Right. Well, what I did think was really cool, too, was to see her banter with Fury. And to see that kind of play out, where she was able to kind of raise her eyebrow and joke with him, and we haven't seen that from him yet, so that was really neat to see him do.
He's like less of a hardened, like, dark guy. He's like he's in his younger days. He still has both eyes.
right. You know? And there were so many fun little Easter eggs in there, too, where you got to see the cover of Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness from the Smashing Pumpkins, and where they go and they see Blockbuster, and, of course, we're all laughing hysterically. I had to try and explain to Aurelia what Blockbuster was, and she was like, oh I know already, Mom. I know. You've already told me. And I'm like, okay, geez Louise. But then Radio Shack right next door for communication.
Right?
Yes.
And the payphones, oh my goodness, I was so excited. Yeah. It was literally like jumping back to being, 7 years old for me. I don't know, for you guys, but whatever.
But like 5 or something. So like no big deal.
I mean, it was great to kind of be immersed in that nostalgia again, just with like the music and the now defunct companies and the payphones and everything like that. The only thing that, like, kind of got me was that everything seemed, like, the colors seemed a lot more muted. And maybe it's just me, but I remember the 90s being a lot more colorful and bright.
Yeah.
Like, in general, like, the cars, the clothes, the ads, like, everything was just, like, awash with color. And it felt to me like the movie was trying too hard to be 90s, but it still wasn't quite capturing all of what the 90s was. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I
There's
think
a
so.
90s song that talks about how if you don't take pictures, it's basically that you just have to depend on the faulty camera in your mind. Do you know what song that is?
I vaguely remember that. It's ringing a bell, though.
And I feel like that's a lot of this, you know, because, I mean, sure, maybe the colors were more vivid because we were seeing them, and maybe they weren't so vivid because they were in a movie shot 20-some years later. But, you know, I really enjoyed the effort that got put into it.
Well, I mean, I have tons of pictures from the 90s when I was growing up, and that's, like, just one of, like, the biggest things was all the color. Just everywhere.
I mean, Lisa Frank. Need we say
yeah,
more?
like, I mean, Lisa Frank was not, like, some one-off thing. Like, there were so many things that were just as colorful.
Let's talk about the Marvel intro to Stan.
You mean the, oh yes, because this was the first movie that came out since he's passed away now, isn't it? The first Marvel movie,
yes,
and I loved
the
that they gave him the montage of all his cameos. And,
oh, wasn't it cute?
I loved it.
That was adorable. And I actually teared up when it got to his cameo because he's reading the script for this movie that he was in before, like in the 90s. And he was like practicing his lines and everything, and just the way that like he looked up at her and that she smiled at him, it was just like, okay, you've got me.
Yep. And now we do have a couple more cameos of his coming up, correct? We have the Endgame one and then Far From Home. I don't remember if there's one in Far From Home or not. Spider-Man Far From Home.
I don't remember. I know there is one in Endgame.
There is an Endgame one. But I don't know if there's a Spider-Man Far From Home one. But I know that there is... I want to say that there was, and we've talked about it before, so whether there is one or not. And I know that I used to know, so we can look it up and make sure. But I am definitely looking forward to seeing his cameo in Endgame. I really loved that they did the intro montage with Stan Lee in there. It was just so... What a great way to pay tribute to the guy that made everything possible.
Right. Well, and then with the thank you, Stan, everybody in the theater I was in was clapping.
Yes.
So.
Yes, exactly. That was just...
I don't think there was a dry eye anywhere.
Nope. For sure. I did want to mention back to the movie again. I don't... This, like, seems way from left field, but I also wanted to talk about the plot point where Carol, where we know her as Veers to begin with, and she's like, she's in training with the Kree, and Jude Law's character is her like mentor or whatever, and she has these memories and doesn't really know what's supposed to make of them or anything. But the bait and switch thing where, the Skrull are supposed to be the bad guys and the Kree are the good guys, and then it actually ends up in the end they're pushing it the other direction where the Skrull are the ones that have been mistreated by the Kree, and I think it kind of could go either way, but there was a point before we knew that Jude Law's character was going to be the bad guy kind of thing. Like, I knew it. I knew his character was going to end up being like a negative character at some point. Either he was going to betray her and end up being like a Skrull, or they were going to be on the wrong side or something like that. Like I could kind of sense somehow like he was either going to be working for the bad guy or they were the bad guys or something. But I knew something was coming.
Yeah, I kind of felt that too, especially like when she was communicating with him when she was on Earth. Like, I had a feeling.
Yeah, like the first or second time they were communicating, I'm like, yeah, he's definitely a bad guy. But before that, I had like a hint of it, and I just couldn't put my finger on something was off. But like, yeah, definitely during those communications where she would like make the remote phone calls to his ship or whatever, I'm like, oh yeah, for sure, here it comes.
Yeah, and I didn't realize at first that he was involved with Ronan. And so, like, the first time he popped up and everything, like, talking with his character, I'm like, oh yeah, okay. I'm not sure how this is going to play out, but he's definitely the bad guy.
And so when he was first talking with Ronan, you see the holographic figure, I didn't recognize Ronan because he didn't have the black, like, stuff on his face like he does in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Was different.
Yeah, so I'm wondering where that black stuff comes from. Like, why does that happen?
Personal choice? I don't know.
I don't know. Makeup artist decisions? I don't know.
Maybe it's supposed to kind of indicate that he's younger. I don't know.
Yeah, that's kind of what I came up with. Is like, this is before some kind of event happened in his life, and now after that he has like the black stuff. I don't know. But
and I do want to talk at least a little bit briefly about a cameo appearance by a character, Monica Rambeau. I know you guys, probably saw her. Probably didn't think that much about her, but she is a very important and very long-standing character in the Marvel world. So I'm going to make this as brief as possible because this is actually a very long history. But
so she's the daughter of Carol's friend. Is that what?
Yes,
in the
that's
movie.
The friend.
Okay.
Yes,
Wait.
And that's who she is in the movie. In the comics, it's a lot different. So again, I'm going to be as brief as possible. So I'm not going to cover all the subtleties, and I'm just going to be as succinct as possible. So if it's not 100% accurate, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to,
make it brief.
Summarize it, yes.
Yeah.
So, in the beginning, there was a character created who was called Captain Marvel. And he was a little boy who would say the word Shazam and turn into this character that was pretty much Superman. The problem is that he was not a DC character, and so DC sued the company and was able to bring that character on board. And so, for a while, the title Captain Marvel resided in DC and resided with Billy Batson, who we now know, of course, is just Shazam.
Right, okay.
Now, Marvel... Yeah, so now Marvel, of course, is like, hey, we're Marvel Comics, we should have the name Captain Marvel. So they finagled the name back. And, of course, they have to give it to a character because if they're not producing comics, they could lose the name again. So they came up with this character named Monica Rambeau. And back in the day, when she came out, it was a really cool character that came out because she was a woman, she was a black woman, and she was unapologetically black, and she was proud, and she was, sassy and snarky, and she was not going to take anyone's crap. And, at the time, this was a huge development for a female character. And Marvel decided, you know what? This just isn't quite working for us. We want somebody who can, really headline the name Captain Marvel. So then they came up with Marvel. And he claimed the title. And unfortunately, he wasn't as popular. Anyway, unfortunately, Marvel was not all that popular and didn't really catch on like he was supposed to. So they put together this arc called The Death of Captain Marvel, and they killed him off. However, even though Monica was still there and still kind of technically Captain Marvel, they decided, you know what, we don't want to give it back to Monica, so we're going to come up with a new character. And so Marvel's son came along, and he took the name Captain Marvel, and Monica was given the name Photon. So remember this, she is Photon. Marvel's son is Captain Marvel. And, so they stick with that dynamic, and over time, Marvel's son kind of grows and evolves, and he changes, and he gets to this point where he's like, you know what, I don't want to be Captain Marvel anymore. However, again, instead of giving it back to Monica, who had it originally, he shuffles it off to his sister, and he takes the name Photon. So again, he takes Monica's name. So Monica, at that point, became known as Auntie Monica, or the A-U-N-T-I-E Monica, not A-N-T-I Monica.
Uh-huh.
just to be clear. So she was Auntie Monica. She didn't even have a name, really, other than her name. She didn't really have a title or anything. And so Marvel's daughter was Captain Marvel. And after some time, as comic companies are wont to do, they decided, you know what, we're going to change this up again. And we're going to have a new Captain Marvel. However, instead of going to Monica again, they decided to promote Ms. Marvel at the time, who was Carol Danvers. And so Ms. Marvel was given the title of Captain Marvel. Eventually, the character Kamala Khan came along, and they gave her the title Ms. Marvel. And Monica, they eventually rebranded as Spectrum. So that's kind of the whole little history of the name Captain Marvel and who's had it, and Monica, and how Monica Rambeau is actually like a lot more important than like just the daughter of Carol's friend.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of intrigued as to what they may do with her in the future, if she'll become important or if this was just like a one-off Easter egg kind of thing.
But
I hope not, though.
She seemed like a really awesome little girl, and I could totally see her growing up into the future and becoming something really cool. Like, well, she even said in the movie, maybe I'll build a spaceship. So
yeah, I noticed that too.
I mean, I'd love to see her come back. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, and maybe like they'll eventually work her into where she could be a part of this next phase. Because I mean, obviously with this next phase, with how they're putting Captain Marvel out there, I'm hoping that they'll bring in some new characters as well. Because I've heard that they're planning on putting out an openly gay superhero. I'm not sure which one yet. The most prominent one that comes to my mind is Shatterstar, but I mean, there's more than just him out there. So I don't know. We'll see what all is going to be involved once Marvel takes a hold of this new phase.
Yeah, I'm interested to find out what happens after Endgame, because it's kind of like the void of Marvel's letting us into their secrets. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, cool. Lindsay, any other thoughts on the movie?
No, I think I'm all set.
Okay. Shall we address the...
Oh, I do have one last thing for headcanons.
Yes.
I do have a couple of them. I have a couple of them that has developed as a part of this movie. So, you remember when Coulson got left behind at Blockbuster?
Oh, yeah.
My headcanon is that he was searching for that 1990 Captain America movie. In Blockbuster.
I love
it. To see if they had it in stock.
That's fantastic. He would, though, too. That just seems like a Coulson thing to do. He's almost like the absent-minded agent in a way sometimes.
Yeah. And then my second one, now obviously we know, and I'm really annoyed by the fact that the Flurkin is the cause of Nick's eye missing, because in Winter Soldier he had said, oh, the last person I trusted, I lost my eye. And it's like, really? Like, This was the whole big story behind you losing your eye? Like, that's trash. I'm sorry. No.
Yeah,
Coulson.
Okay. I forgot that he said that line, actually, so I thought it was hilarious that the cat was the reason. But if he already said something about it, then I'm like, okay, come on.
Yeah, and when he delivered it, because he was talking to Steve, and Steve was, protesting this thing that S.H.I.E.L.D. was doing with the... that satellite thing, like monitoring and everything, and so Fury was basically saying like, well, the last time I trusted somebody, I lost an eye, and the way he said it was like indicated some dark, deep secret, and I know fans have been like speculating like, oh, who betrayed Nick Fury and what happened and how did it go down, and turns out he got scratched in the eye by a Flurkin.
Right. Okay.
But
I think it would be hilarious to have a cat named Flurkin, though.
But my headcanon, because I am a medical nerd, and I am curious as all get out as to how he actually loses his eye via this, because, obviously he scratched his eye, but his eye didn't lose function of it immediately, because later that evening he was fine. It was just a scratch, and it's not until sometime later that we found out he's completely lost function of his eye.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of wondering, like, what kind of disease vectors were passed off, how it was transmitted, like, what exact damage the Flurkin did to his eye, and how it, like, infected him. Does that make sense? I know my disease processes teacher would be all over this, trying to figure it out. But my personal thing is, the reason why Fury acts so differently in Captain Marvel, as opposed to, like, every other Marvel movie, is because whatever disease or venom or however the Flurkin damaged his eye, whatever he got, actually infected his brain and affected his personality. Oh. Because the eye is so close to it, maybe it just kind of seeped over there and started messing with his brain chemistry.
That is a possibility. And we may never find out, but we can have that headcanon all we want. I think it works.
That's about the best I can come up with.
Yeah, I mean, it could be the thing. I don't even know. Okay, but so the final Easter egg little scene was of the Flurkin on Fury's desk, hacking up something. I totally expected this to happen like during the movie for comedic timing or something, but it ended up being the Flurkin spitting out the Tesseract onto his desk. I'm like, I thought that was going to happen during the movie. That's the end credit thing. Come on. Come on. But I did enjoy like the mid video thing, like
the okay, mid credits.
Yes, the mid credits one where they're showing the left Avengers, the ones that are like remaining, and they're like, oh no, the thing stopped doing the thing. What thing? And then all of a sudden she shows up and she's like, where's Fury?
I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of curious if this is going to be like how it happens in Infinity War, or if like basically what happens in Infinity War is post that scene.
Yeah.
Like, I'm kind of curious how that's going to fit in.
I'm not really sure. But, like, okay, and now that we have the next Endgame trailer out, we know that, like, it's like Thor's standing right in front of Carol, and he, like, summons his hammer, and it just whizzes right past her, she doesn't flinch, and he's like, I like this one. I'm like, okay, well, cool, we've got, like, people interacting with her and that sort of thing, like she's starting to get to know the Avengers, so that's good, like, I don't know.
Yeah, it didn't really, like, have a whole lot of information that, like, I couldn't extrapolate myself already, so right. I don't know, I kind of felt a little bit like a letdown, because it's like, it didn't seem like there was anything overly new about it.
No, yeah, exactly. Like, I didn't know that she was going to be, like, at the headquarters with all of them, so I mean, that was all. But, like, I would have found that out if I had seen Captain Marvel before watching the trailer, which I think is why they did the timing the way they did it.
Probably.
They put out Captain Marvel, and then they released the new trailer.
Yeah.
But other than that, like, okay, nothing super exciting.
I'm kind of curious where they get their new suits from.
Yes, I did notice. Yeah, the trailer, they have all those new suits where they're like, we're a team, Avengers, ha! Kind of thing. Like, okay.
Didn't they do look cool. Like something you would wear in the quantum realm?
Could be. I mean, they looked very snazzy.
I mean, I think they've been, like, hinting towards something with that anyway, with Ant-Man and the Wasp and everything like that, so
that's
that will be interesting. I wonder if that's where everybody went when Thanos snapped. Is if
right?
They just...
If they became quantumified.
Oh, there's so many theories as to what's going on.
Oh boy. Everybody became quantumified. They're in the quantum plane of existence now.
And if there's anything that we do know, it's that you can't trust the trailers for as
accuracy.
Far as you can throw them. So.
Well, yeah. Everything in the trailers is what it is. You can't take
Marvel
anything
likes to
further.
troll us.
It's true though. That is to be expected. But it's part of their deal. It's their thing. It's how they roll, I guess. So, all right. Well, thanks for getting nerdy with us today. We would love it if you could check out our store. We still have awesome merch. It's I'll put the link in our thing. I just got my first merch, even though you guys can't see it. I'm holding it. I got a travel mug with our We Talk Nerdy to You logo on it, and I love it. It's metal. Okay. It's great. But we're also getting some other merch too. Check out the t-shirts. We've got pillows and wall art and whatever you possibly could want to deck out your space. That's all we've got for you today. I'm Emily.
I'm Elisabeth.
And I'm Lindsay. And thanks for getting nerdy with us today on Beauties and Headcanons.